Right now, I'd like to bring on our first guest, Tim O'Shea, the CEO and founder of Clearview Logix. Tim, good morning to you.
Good morning, Doug, Jonathan.
Hey.
How are you?
Yeah, this is Doug. Tim, Jonathan, and I are both here. Hey, nice to have you on the program. Good to talk to you.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here, and I look forward to our discussion.
Yeah. So give our audience that may not know Clearview Logix a little backgrounder on yourself and Clearview Logix.
Okay, I'd love to do that. We have three co-founders. We have a business person, that's me. My physician partner, Dr. Larry Colley, who's been building patented health analytic models for decades, and a young tech whiz, I'll call him, Alan Hetzel-Manolis. And Larry and I started working together in the 80s, actually with Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Virginia. Besides being a medical director, he led our health outcomes research team, which I guess at the time was sort of at the frontier of what we now call health analytics. So, he's been involved in analyzing how benefit design affects claim use patterns, et cetera, for really 3 decades. And in the early 2000s, we sort of got back together and formed a consulting / benefits advisory firm that offered patented proprietary analytics to our clients. And that foundation of analytic work really enabled us to grow to a couple thousand employer clients and about a 30-person firm. In 2014, we exited that business and started Clearview Logix, really with the mission of making healthcare simpler for the consumer. So, for a decade or so, we focused on helping employers make good decisions about what plan, what funding arrangement, et cetera, is best for them. And we shifted gears in 2014 with really a focus on the consumer. So that's our core team, and it's really, we're constantly looking for ways to make healthcare simpler.
I think it's so important to overall consumerism adoption. If we're going to have true consumerism, we've got to help employees make those right choices. I don't think every employee and consumer out there wants to understand all the acronyms that even we in this business try to understand, correct? I mean,
correct.
It's complicated space.
Yes, that's correct. It's funny, I was helping my young daughter. I went with her, who was seeking to buy a car last weekend. And we had the sales guy who just wanted to tell us all these technical terms. And I was baffled. I'm sure my daughter was baffled. We really just wanted to look at the 5 things that were important to us and help us make a decision based on that. And, it's not too different when you're just picking a health plan.
Yeah. So Tim, tell us how your solution works. Just talk a little bit about it. Get us behind the scenes and how it works and how it really helps the consumer make these decisions.
Okay. So there are multiple tools out there that are in use by exchanges, or there are some broker consultants who have tools, and so there are different types of tools. And one's known as kind of a calculator model, which essentially multiplies the number of units times the cost per unit, so the number of physician office visits times the copay. And these take some pretty tedious input and really have more limited predictive value. Our model is working off of the premise that we are trying to determine through our questions, what percentile user an individual is. And we do that by asking, really 3 simple questions. What their general propensity is to consume. Are there certain events that they know about or are likely to occur for them in the coming year? So an event would be something like having a baby or an elective surgery. And then the third question is condition-based. Are there any conditions that make your medical needs, a little more complicated? So that could be things like asthma or diabetes or a heart condition. And so what the algorithm does is it takes all that information and says, okay, Doug is a 60 percentile user. And we run that expected use pattern through the specific plan designs, copays, coinsurance, deductible, et cetera, that are available to you, and we calculate an expected out-of-pocket cost for each plan option. And so when you take the combination of the expected out-of-pocket cost and the employee's share of the premium, you really get a full financial projection or forecast of how that experience might be. And then we really show that information to the consumer for all the plans available to them so that they get a complete picture. We don't just say, hey, we think you should take the HDHP. We actually show the financial analysis for all the plan options in sort of a value setting.
When did this first deploy?
We actually, I guess I'll answer that two ways. In our employer work, when we were a consulting firm, we had developed patented models that projected expected out-of-pocket cost. At the time, for that use, we were really looking at just average out-of-pocket use. So what we did in late 2013, entering 2014, is start from scratch and building a model for the consumer so that we could predict the out-of-pocket cost. So anyway, employers started using my Clearview, our tool, in January of 2014.
Okay. And where, I mean, we talked about exchanges, and you and I, you've been with us on our exchange events. So exchanges are one distribution vehicle, one place for your tool, but you can also, are you also finding yourself integrated with these benefit admin and enrollment platforms? Is that where you find yourself too? Is that?
Yes, we are. Of course, the end consumer is our ultimate customer, but we have multiple ways of getting to that end consumer. And the first is direct to employers or a multi-employer consortium of some kind via a branded website. And those are typically run side by side with an enrollment platform or even a paper enrollment. Second is through broker consultants. We license a white label version of our websites to a broker consultant for their clients. And the third is through API connectivity with an enrollment platform such as an exchange, a marketplace, a payroll system, a PEO, any aggregator of enrollment. And that's, I mentioned, through API.
Right. So you can work with the employer coalitions for their members. Is that what you're alluding to too? Is that for your direct to employer? Yeah. Okay, that's great. I did not know that, Tim, and I know you guys, but I did not know that. So you just, any of our listeners out there, that's important for them to hear. Where do you see health plan and supplemental health is enough to get your arms around. So that's kind of the first step, right? But what do you see beyond that? Because all this, as we move into more full adoption of consumerism programs and private exchanges emerges, everyone knows it took a little hiccup this year, but rightfully so, because it's going to be a long-term play. It makes sense. And consumerism's here to stay. So as you see this move, voluntary and telehealth, healthcare access, telehealth, transparency solutions, all this is emerging as part of a benefit portfolio that, employees and their families can go in there and make choice. So how do you see that evolving around with kind of your footprint around decision support or decision support as a whole?
Well, we do see health plan selection decision support as kind of part of a continuum of consumer services, and we're just really, one piece of that. But we think we're one piece or the piece that can be really effective right now. I think we're really low-hanging fruit. I love the concept of cost transparency tools, but we have to have the provider reimbursement system kind of evolve a little further until those can be fully effective. But we can do a much better job as a society helping people pick the right health plan now. And so that's really where our focus has been. With our model, and I think with other decision support models, we see a significant bump or increase in the selection of high deductible plans and other consumer-driven plans. And we think it's because, the tools help the individual to understand them better, and the tools might nudge them to consider it when they may not have considered it seriously in the past. So we'll see at a minimum sort of like a 15 to 20% increase in HDHP participation. And we've had some, we had one recently that went from 8% of the employees to 61% of the employees in an HDHP. So part of your question, too, is the entire benefits continuum to the employees. And when we see employees pick the right plan, and if that's a HDHP, a byproduct of that is an increase in voluntary coverage participation. So they might be buying dental or a little extra life insurance or a vision plan, for example, because they have a few extra dollars that they were going to spend on health insurance, but now they're not. And so they buy something more. But I agree totally that the health plan selection is really the big one that we need to get right and help people get right.
Yeah, it's the most important first step and very complex as you've highlighted. Hey, if I'm a enrollment firm, a broker firm, exchange listening, even an employer or a coalition leader listening to this program, what's the business model? I mean, how do I, what's that look like?
Right. Well, let's start. If we sell our model directly, or let's call it license our model directly to an employer, the retail cost of that is $1 per employee a month, or $12 per employee a year. So 300 employees, $3,600 for the year. The site's up all year long, open enrollment through the plan year for new enrollees. And so that's the most I think someone would pay.
So it's per employer per month. Got it. Okay. So per employer per month.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our typical model. I'm sorry, per employer per month. If we're working with an exchange or maybe I'll go with like a payroll company or a ben admin system, we do tend to still work off the PEPM arrangement, but the cost per employee month will be much lower because obviously we're working with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people at one time. So that can be, 20, 30 cents on the dollar, potentially, given the right amount of volume. We are also working on a license arrangement for brokers so that they can build their own sites. We have that capability now. We think they can build a decision support model branded to the employer in an hour or less. And those would be really inexpensive, too, relative to the retail cost.
Mm-hmm. Are these, these channels for you and these customers for you, what are some of the hurdles to get them to open their eyes and say, hey, this is something that we need to do? And, obviously you have your unique value proposition, but from decision support as a whole, what are some of the hurdles that we need to get by for adoption to continue to pick up?
Well, that's a great question. And in 2016, we have seen a big uptick in demand, both from employers directly and from brokers and other players. And I think the primary reason for that is developers and employers were just tied up with compliance reporting for the last 2 years, in 14 and 15. And it really wasn't until January of 16 that rolled out successfully for most employers. So we're seeing a big uptick right now, and I think there can be some resistance sometimes with things like, not all of my employees have access to the internet, which I think is hard to believe these days. There's a little bit of a cost resistance. We have had some success in having carriers subsidize the cost for some employers, so that sort of takes that off the table. And it's funny, we always get great feedback from our employee users. and they don't really question the results. We always get into deep conversations with brokers, though, about what our model's saying and is it right. But the employees seem to take it at face value.
That's good. Now, a consumer cannot come to your site and access this tool, can they? Is there a direct-to-consumer component?
They cannot. However, we are working, and we plan to roll out this year an HSA-specific model, which will enable an individual to kind of project their expected out-of-pocket costs and then plan their HSA fund contribution. And we're planning for that to be available direct to the consumer.
Love to have you back on when you're ready with that and talk about that. I think that's very interesting. I think that's a segment of the market that's very confused as well. And, what do we do? What do we put in? Even which HSA should we have? Most of them don't know they can choose other HSAs if they choose to. So that'd be a very interesting discussion. Hey, Tim, it's been great having you on. To kind of let you close here, kind of close with kind of a summary of Clearview Logix value proposition to your clients and any other takeaways you want to leave us with.
Okay, well, our purpose, whether we're working through an employer or direct to the consumer, is to help them save money and to really help them make an informed decision. And if you're a broker, we can help solidify your client relationship by offering a service to your client that perhaps is not available elsewhere, and it really is really inexpensive. And as an enrollment platform, I think, we can expect that over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see decision support be commonplace, and I think you want to be a little ahead of that curve rather than behind it. Our model's quick and easy and easy to integrate. It was built, time-tested by a doctor. He's the author of patented decision support tools, and really the cost of decision support should be no less than 1/10 or no more than 1/10 of 1% of healthcare premiums. It's really a rounding error in the grand scheme of things.
Tim, great to have you on the program. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, can you let them know how, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the time. It's been great to be with you. I can be reached. Our website is www.clearviewlogix.com, and it's Toshea, Toshea at clearviewlogix.com.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate your time this morning. Great discussion. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Great. We'll see you in Vegas, if not before.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Look forward to it. Okay. Take care.